Bible gives Satan directly quoted words exactly 3 times. The scene you probably picture first isn't one of them. 3 lines. That's the entire recorded voice of the villain you've heard about your whole life. First, the wilderness. A man has gone 40 days without food, alone in open desert, past the point where hunger even feels like hunger anymore. The sun has burned the color out of everything around him. Rock, sand, sky, all the same pale weight. 40 days is not a random number in this story. Moses fasted 40 days on the mountain. Israel wandered the wilderness for 40 years. Whatever is about to happen here is happening on ground. The whole Bible has already marked as a testing place. And that is when the voice arrives. It does not threaten. It reasons quiet, patient, almost kind. If you are the Son of God, it says, command these stones to become bread. Jesus answers without arguing the premise. It is written, he says, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. No debate over whether he could turn stone into bread. Only whether hunger gets to decide what happens next. The scene changes. They are standing on the highest point of the temple in Jerusalem now, wind moving across the stone, the whole city small and pale beneath them. If you are the Son of God, the voice says again, throw yourself down. This time it reaches for Scripture itself, quoting a line from the Psalms back at him, a promise that angels will catch him before his foot ever touches stone. Jesus answers with Scripture of his own. It is also written, he says, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. The devil has just quoted the Bible accurately, word for word, and still loses the exchange. The words were true. The use he made of them was not. The Greek word behind devil here is diabolos, literally, one who throws something across your path. Not a monster in this scene, an obstacle placed on purpose, dressed up as a shortcut. Notice something else before the third scene starts. Both temptations so far open with the exact same 4 words. If you are the Son of God, the doubt is the weapon before the offer ever is. One more scene. A high mountain now, and from it, somehow, every kingdom of the world laid out at once, bright and close enough to touch. All of this I will give you, the voice says, if you will fall down and worship me. No riddle this time, no misquoted verse. Just the offer, stated plainly, and the price stated just as plainly beside it. Away from me, Satan, Jesus says, for it is written, worship the Lord your God, and serve him only. Neither of them speaks again in this scene. Luke's account adds one detail worth sitting with. The devil leaves him only until an opportune time. Not gone, finished for now. People have noticed for centuries that these 3 temptations line up with 3 categories of failure that show up everywhere else in Scripture: appetite, presumption, and power. Bread is the body's hunger. The temple ledge is a test of God's protection. The mountain is the desire to rule without paying the cost of ruling rightly. Jesus is offered all 3 in one afternoon and refuses all 3 with the same weapon each time, a line from Scripture he had already memorized. Matthew and Luke don't even agree on the order these 3 happened in. Matthew puts the mountain last. Luke puts the temple last. Only the words spoken match between them almost exactly. If you've ever caught that detail on your own, good. Most readers never do. 3 offers, 3 quotations, 3 flat refusals. This is the only time in the entire Bible that Satan opens his mouth and simply loses in his own recorded words without a shred of ambiguity. 1 entry down, 2 left, and the next one happens in a room no human being was ever allowed to walk into. If you're new here, this channel counts what the Bible actually says instead of what everyone assumes it says. Subscribe if that's the kind of thing you want showing up in your feed. Second, a room no human being was ever allowed to walk into. Before the scene moves there, one line about the man it's going to affect. Job is introduced as blameless and upright, a man who feared God and turned away from evil, wealthy enough to be called the greatest man in the East. None of that happens on screen. It happens in a single verse, so the story can get to the room faster. Zoom out from the desert, out from earth entirely. The sons of God present themselves before the Lord, and Satan comes with them. This is the ancient picture of a heavenly court, a throne room with other beings already standing in it. And Satan walks in as one more member of that court, not an intruder. God asks him directly, "From where have you come?" Satan answers, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." The Hebrew here is ha-Satan, the accuser, with the definite article attached, the way you'd say the prosecutor, rather than someone's given name. In this room, Satan is closer to a job title than an identity. God brings up Job by name and calls him blameless. Satan answers with a wager instead of a compliment. Does Job fear God for no reason? Stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. Permission is given. In a single day, Job loses his livestock, his servants, and all 10 of his children. Job does not know any of this happened in a conversation first. He only knows what lands on him. He tears his robe, shaves his head, falls to the ground, and blesses the name of the Lord anyway. The accuser is not finished. Back in the same room, he raises the bid. Skin for skin, all that a man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse you to your face. Permission is given again. Job is covered in sores from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet, sitting in ashes, scraping his own skin with broken pottery. The man being tested is the only person in the entire story who never hears a word of the conversation that started it. Satan appears a handful of other times in the Bible. In almost every one, he never gets to say anything at all. In Zechariah, Satan stands at a priest's right hand to accuse him. The Lord's response is quoted in full. "The Lord rebuke you, Satan." Satan's own accusation never makes it onto the page. In Chronicles, Satan incites King David to take a census that ends in disaster. He's named, he's blamed. He never gets a single line of dialogue. The older account of the same event, in Samuel, credits the same idea to God instead, with no mention of Satan at all. In Revelation, Satan appears as a great dragon, waging war in heaven and being thrown down to earth in fury. Whole chapters are given to what he does. Not one line is given to what he says. Centuries earlier, at the Last Supper, Jesus tells Simon Peter, "Satan has demanded to have you, to sift you like wheat." That sounds like a quotation? It isn't. It's Jesus reporting a request secondhand, the closest Satan gets to speaking anywhere in the New Testament, outside one other scene. And even here, it's someone else's voice carrying his. Notice what's missing across all 4 of these: Zechariah, Chronicles, Revelation, the upper room. Satan is named in everyone, and you never once hear him actually speak. Third, a garden, and a conversation you already think you know by heart. The serpent speaks first. Did God actually say, "You shall not eat from any tree in the garden"? Eve corrects him. They can eat from any tree except the one in the middle, or they'll die. The serpent answers flatly, "You will not surely die." That's it, 5 verses. A question, a correction, a flat denial, and the fruit gets eaten. And in all 5 verses in the entire chapter, one word never once appears. Genesis calls it Nachash, Hebrew for serpent, nothing more specific than that. Not a title, not an alias, just the word for the animal. A word whose root can also mean to hiss or to practice divination, which is likely why this particular creature was already unsettling before it ever opened its mouth. The identification you already have in your head, serpent equals Satan, doesn't show up anywhere in Scripture until Revelation, written roughly 6 decades after the Gospels. John calls the dragon that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan. That is the New Testament closing a loop that Genesis itself never opened. Even Paul, writing decades before Revelation, references this same scene and still calls it only the serpent, not Satan, not the devil. A Jewish text from roughly a century before Christ, known as the Wisdom of Solomon, comes close to making the connection when it says death entered the world through the envy of the devil, though even there, the serpent itself is never directly named. The Jewish historian Josephus, retelling the story around the same era as the Gospels, has the serpent act out of envy and lose the power of speech as punishment, and he never once reaches for the name either. This is not a minor technicality. This is not a footnote for people who like footnotes. This is the most famous scene of Satan speaking in the entire Bible, and Satan is never named in it. You have almost certainly pictured this scene with that name attached, because everyone has. Ask most people to describe the time Satan tempted Eve, and they will retell Genesis 3 without hesitation, sure they are quoting the text. They are quoting the tradition built on top of it, centuries of sermons, paintings, and retellings that did the connecting for them so smoothly it feels like memory instead of inheritance. By the time medieval artists started painting the scene with a serpent that has a human face, the identification had already been treated as settled fact for 1,000 years. That is not a flaw specific to this story. It's what your own memory does with anything repeated enough. It backfills the gaps and hands you back something that feels whole, whether every piece of it was actually there to begin with or not. 2 scenes. That's the entire recorded voice of Satan in the Bible, the wilderness, and the room where Job was tested and never told. Everything else, the census, the accusation in Zechariah, the war in Revelation, the demand relayed at the Last Supper, the garden itself, Satan is present, or blamed, or assumed, and you'll almost never catch him actually speaking. The one exception you are probably surest about is the one that isn't true. This is not a coincidence. This is not a translation issue. This is the single most confidently misremembered scene in the whole Bible. If the Bible is this careful about which words it puts in his mouth, that's probably worth matching the next time you're the one deciding what he supposedly said. So tell me, which surprised you more, that Job never heard a word of the conversation about him, or that the most famous Satan scene in the whole Bible never once uses his name?